Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. I'm Tim Harris. Thank you so much for swinging back by this week. Quick reminder, click below, like, subscribe, get notifications, give us a review. All of it helps us grow and spread this knowledge and information to broader sources. But today, I have a very special guest, my friend, my boss, my partner, the founder, CEO of RCN Capital, Jeff Tesch. Jeff, thank you for being here.
So good to be back in Dallas and finally to see this amazing studio that you have been doing so much great work in.
So this is the final episode of season 2, but more importantly, it marks 1 year of executing the vision that I think you and I discussed 18 to 20 something months ago, where you emphatically said, I want to have a podcast. And I said, well, what do you want to accomplish? You said, at the end of every episode, I want to help investors make more money. I'm going to go a little off script. Can you talk about why that was important to you?
Sir, so here's what I know. In the 12 years that RCN Capital has been around, we have successfully funded investors on their journeys. And we've done an amazing job with it. We really have. Not to be boastful, but providing that capital to take distressed housing in what has been an incredible journey and put it back into the marketplace for families to live in. It's just an amazing story. But here's what I know about our investors. Best practices are learned. They are just learned.
Right.
There's no book. And this trial and error, if you can figure it out from others that have come before you and had best practices and made mistakes, and then share them into the community, it's a service that just goes on and on and on. It's why this podcast wins.
Right. So I think I want to get into like your background, but first we're going to do the bluff. The bottom line up front, up to 2, I know I don't have to tell you this, but I'm going to tell you, I got to say it anyway, up to 2 minutes, kind of the most important things you see in today's market or economy, things that you think investors should be doing or maybe not doing or avoiding or focused on. Just kind of 2 minutes of like what's on the top of your mind. You ready?
Sure.
Go.
Patience. And why I say patience right now, Tim, it is so very, very important that investors understand money is not made overnight. Money is not made in a month. Money is not made in a year in real estate. Real estate is all about patience. Now, ever since the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates in calendar year 2022, investors have had a lot of questions. Is now the time? Should I wait? Should I think about maybe selling into this marketplace? Should I double down? All these questions. And it just goes back to patience. The investors over time that are the most successful are the ones that look at their model, stick with their game plan, and in good times and bad, don't vary from that model. Patience is the key, Tim. Over time, real estate rewards the patient.
So the wonderful thing about that is this business also attracts very impatient people. So we'll come back to that. A lot of times people see maybe the founder, CEO of this multi-billion-dollar origination engine, and they think he doesn't get me, right? They don't understand me. So let's go all the way back to how Jeff owned some franchise sandwich businesses, to how Jeff got into real estate investing, to how Jeff even knew what hard money was, and then ultimately where that springboard came from 12, 13 years ago.
Sure. So listen, I went to college, got a degree in business. I don't know what that degree really did for me. But I can remember the first time it actually goes back to high school. This is actually a good story. So I'm a junior in high school, and I had a business class. I couldn't tell you what the title of the class was. Maybe Business 101 Intro. And I can remember the teacher was very dynamic. She was just a tremendous educator with a lot of passion. And I can remember going in, and we got to the part of the year where we started talking about real estate and how it all works. I'm 16 years old. What do I know, right? And she started talking about how debt works for investors. So investors would buy a property, and they go to a bank and they get a mortgage. And then as time goes on, the investors will use the money from the rents to pay down the mortgage. And I said, wait a minute. This I'm like, it blew my mind, Tim. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, wait, I go buy a house. I put a tenant in the house. They give me money. I take that money, I give it to the bank. And then after a certain amount of time, I own the house, but I never paid the mortgage. My tenant paid. Oh, man. This is the greatest thing ever. And that's how it all started for me. I was like, this is incredible. Like just absolutely incredible. And then from there, went to college, got my business degree. And I wanted to work for myself. I ate a lot of Subway sandwiches in college. A lot. I didn't like the food in the cafeteria.
Right.
And, back in the 90s, they were blowing up. They were building them fast. And I went to my dad. He co-signed a loan for me. And I bought my first franchise. And I literally knew nothing about running a business. But what I did know is if I just put in enough work and enough time, it would hopefully be successful. And that was kind of how my whole work ethic started.
Right.
Putting in the time. And I built one, ran that for maybe 18 months. And then I built another. Then I built some more. I partnered with my brother for a while. He ended up leaving the business. We bought, we sold, and then I was back on my own. And I did this really for almost 20 years. And the beauty of it was I had all of the responsibility of somebody who was building a little mini empire, but you could easily sell these if you wanted to. So it wasn't an illiquid asset,
right?
Which was cool.
Yeah.
It was very similar to real estate. Now, with some of the money that I made in the Subway business, started buying some properties. I was never a flipper. That wasn't my game. I was busy running the business. But I started to put that high school model into effect, buying properties, putting in tenants, renting them out, and making money. And it was really, really cool. And, and that took me up to 2010 when I got together with an old buddy, a wealthy individual owned a software company. And he's like, I think we need to start a private lending company. Of course, everyone remembers what it was like in 2010, just awful, right? Like foreclosures, not selling, short sales, just terrible times. But we looked at it as now is the time to take hard money, a very specific product that was often very marginalized and really not something that was fun to use,
right?
Mainly because of the unprofessional nature of the transaction, and build a company that would take that single asset loan, the hard money loan, and elevate it to a commercial status. That was the genesis of RCN Capital, better known as rehabcashnow.com back in the day. And build a professional lending company that would elevate that, tried and true product, which is an asset-based loan.
We need your help. Wherever you are, stop what you're doing right now and rate us on whatever platform you're listening on. Take a screenshot of your review and click the link in the description for your chance to win some Uncontested Investing AirPods. A winner will be picked on July 11th.
And I think the cool thing that I'd like the audience to know is you didn't do it by completely different than the way I started B2R Finance around that point in time, right? I was one of the recruited, and we had this massive bankroll, and we're, big offices and 50 staff within like 2 months. You slung loans for a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah.
You and a couple of guys and gals in a room.
Mm-hmm. There was, in the very beginning, November of 2010, there was a room with 2 desks, 2 phones, and 2 computers. It was me and a salesperson, and that was it. And basically, it was just trying to figure out how I could leverage what I knew about real estate and figure out how to be a banker. I had no idea how any of it worked, but I knew if I started leveraging contacts that I had, asking the right questions, using outside resources, that we could, slowly but surely build something that would be sustainable. And that was really the key.
And let's fast forward. So here we are coming up on 13 years later. What does RCN look like now? It's not one room anymore.
No, we've got over 250 employees, which we're really proud of. Even more exciting than that, most of the employees that have been with RCN along the way are still here. We've grown, we've added folks, especially from the traditional, conventional residential mortgage origination world,
right,
to add that expertise as we've scaled. But we take a lot of pride in the fact that the culture of the company is one of, come on in, figure it out, come grow with us, and your career will advance. And it's something that the management team, as you know, Tim, we take very seriously.
So 250 employees, couple continents, several permanent offices spread far and wide. We'll do well over $1.5 billion this year. We've got the audacious goal of growing another 20-something% in a year that's a little dicey.
Sure.
And it all started with a lunch conversation, which I think is a great time to take a break. When we come back, I really want to dive into the way you see products, the advancement of the industry, and maybe helping investors make some more money.
Love it.
All right, stick around. We'll be right back.
Here at RCN Capital, we understand that everyone's financial needs are different. Whether you're pursuing long-term or short-term ventures, our wide range of loan programs will help reach your financial goals with ease and flexibility. We have loan programs for fix and flips, long-term rentals, new construction, and multifamily properties. And don't forget to ask about our Platinum program for experienced investors. To learn more about our loan programs or apply, click the link in our bio or email info@rcncapital.com.
Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. Tim Herridge here with the CEO of RCN Capital, Jeff Tesch. Remember, if you're listening, click down below, give us a rating, give us a review, subscribe, like, comment. It lets us know what we can do for you and that you're still there. So, Jeff, I want to dive right into the evolution of the private lending industry. Because when Rehab Cash Now started 12 and a half years ago, it was kind of like a homogenous, hard money product. And it had to be financed by, frankly, people with cash or small local banks. And now you fast forward and Wall Street owns these bonds and there's these securitizations and people are calling a 6.5% rate high when you and I remember when a 9.5% from the bank was good. Can you talk just a little bit about, I don't know, maybe some things that you're proud of? Because we've done well over like 23,000 loans or something by the time June,
Yeah.
We done so many loans and billions in transactions. Could you just talk about kind of the evolution of the industry and maybe some of the things that you have been proud to be a part of, maybe that you foresee coming, and maybe even some things you're passionate about making happen one day?
Right. So, especially for the investors listening out there, right? The standardization of our product has opened up gateways to capital that no one ever could have imagined. Now, what's interesting is back in 2010, we literally used our own money to close loans for almost the first 3 years we were in business. Cash, right? Literal cash. Then, you get bank lines. But then what happened is in like 2015, Wall Street took note of the ability to be able to securitize both short-term and long-term paper, the loans, and that will access cheaper pools of capital. Now, to answer your question about, what am I most proud of? Well, I'll tell you what I'm most proud of. It is the strict underwriting standards that we always used as somebody that was lending their own money, right? It's different when you're lending somebody else's money.
Well, for some people.
It shouldn't be.
Right.
It shouldn't be, but at the end of the day, when you're lending your own money, boy, you're going to make sure you get paid back. That initial genesis of how we built the company, it just rode right into when the capital showed up in 2015, right? When that capital showed up, we already had all the bells and whistles in place and strict underwriting standards so that when we began accessing that capital, whether it be on the short-term or the long-term rental basis, we knew how to make good loans. And that, hands down, is the most thing. I'm just so proud of it because these very sophisticated institutions would come to us and do a due diligence and say, you know what, RCN, you passed the test. We look at your performance. We look at your underwriting standards. We look at your policies and procedures, and they passed the test. Going back to our original conversation on this podcast, remember, I'm the guy making sandwiches for a living, showing up, not knowing anything about mortgages. And 5 years later, I have these, what I think are really smart people with a lot of money telling us that the company that we've built to that point is doing a really good job.
Right.
And it just kind of validated what we were doing.
And so now we've gone from, in 2010, if you could get we'll call it a fix and flip loan. That way we're not using the hard money loan term. But if you could get a fix and flip loan for less than 12% interest and less than 4 points, I mean, that was a pretty smoke. I mean, you had to be a well-qualified borrower. Well, you look at 2021, and there were some of us out there giving 8% loans with 1 point at 80 LTV and even 100% loan to cost. How has it been as a founder in the space to watch the evolution of products, and what's maybe some products or some ideas that you have for the future, not only of RCN, but also for the industry?
Right. And it does go back to the standardization, right? Like the loans being in a and listen, folks, this is how the residential world works, right? Desktop underwrite, for all you folks that understand how they underwrite a loan. You put in all the metrics, your credit score, your debt to income, all this, and you spit out an approval for a home occupied loan. It's not too far off on how we do it on the commercial side now. It's become very standardized. And that has enabled the long-term capital to feel secure in providing monies to us to be able to deploy on a non-owner occupied status. We're going to see more of that. As the past couple years have unwound and the rising rate environment, banks really aren't interested in making mortgages the way they used to be. They're just not. And it's both on the conventional side. We see it with the large players out there, the United Wholesale Mortgages, just absolutely crushing it, and they're not a bank. It's the same on our side. It's the same on the non-owner occupied. We're not a bank. We're not going to be a bank, but we're really good at originating mortgages that pay off. And the smart capital out there that's looking for a long-term return knows that. And I only see the growth continuing, especially on our side of the fence.
You and I go around the nation, according to our wives, probably a little too much, Uh, and we talk to brokers and customers and realtors, and we're very much alike. That we'll talk to anyone we can to learn about the industry or the business. Yeah. I've always found it intriguing how much people are willing to put down or take a lower LTV as long as it like happens the way they wanted it to. How important has, I tell everyone RCN is a under promise, over deliver company. How important in building this company and in essence, this industry, has it been to you to make sure that it's kind of, we do what we say and say what we do?
Oh, it's everything. You know, a lot of my previous life in customer satisfaction transitioned over to this world, and my not having that banking bias allowed me to think, well, if I just make the customer happy, especially for the short-term bridge loans, right?
Right.
I knew that they were going to be back in 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, because they're going to buy it, fix it, sell it. And if I could keep that customer happy, they'll be back really fast. Unlike the conventional mortgage world where I think it's 6.9 months or 7 months, something like, years.
Yeah.
I think it's almost
about 7 years.
It's about 7. Although that number has gone up now because folks just aren't moving around the way they were because of the rates. But anyways, that customer-centric focus is everything. It's how we started. It's how we do it today. I would argue we have way more human resources than we really need to operate the business probably more profitably. But I know that when the customer picks up the phone, somebody on our team, Tim, is there. And I don't want that to sound like a commercial. It's just the reality of how we built the company. You know, we built our own software internally and branded it Bridge Loan Network, and the software is amazing. But without the human capital behind it, I don't think software has a place in our business if you can't pick up the phone and get somebody on the other end.
Well, we were talking about it earlier. I was visiting one of our really large customers earlier this week, and they were sharing that, you know, they spread their loans out amongst multiple lenders like most people do. But he was saying how great it was with us that if something went wrong or wasn't standard, which in this business, there's a lot that's not standard, that he could get someone on the phone that actually knew what they were talking about, not just someone on the phone, right?
That's right.
Huge difference. Your executive team that you've had for a while now, they all take great pride in making sure that it's referred to as fix and flip, not flip and fix, right? Like that vernacular, that well-trained portion seems important. I would like to switch a little bit towards kind of your personal, I know you've bought some rental properties. I know that clearly you started one of the leading lenders in the space. How important is it to be, I hate to use the phrase vertically integrated because everyone uses it and sometimes it means nothing. Sometimes it means everything. How important has it been for you to make sure that kind of everything's in-house?
Yeah.
Right? Like from closing to processing to underwriting to servicing to the software. Why was that important? Was it the Subway influence? What was it?
Yeah, it's interesting because once again, it was really twofold. It was back in the day, there was no private lending industry. It was hard money lenders that just kind of went out, looked at a property and made. So there was no servicing company that I could go contract with. Now I could use outside counsel to close loans. That would be fine, but there was a cost to that, right? So as those first few years went along, it was very apparent to me that two things. One, if I was going to keep my costs as low as possible for the customer, I needed to control those costs, which means I needed to in-house service the loans. I needed to close the loans in-house. That way I was able to control the cost. I wasn't at somebody else's decision that, fees were going up. That was really important. But the second side of it was I also controlled the experience. As soon as you relinquish any portion of your business to an outside vendor, number one, you still get the blame. But number two, you lose control.
Yeah.
And it's why from the very beginning, we've done it all in-house. And it's really worked out very well.
Well, and I think the audience needs to know and hear that so much of that, it applies to any business. It's not just a big national lender. In my little acquisitions business, I tell people all the time, the thing I hate about flipping houses so much, the thing I hate the most is so much of my word depends on other people's performance, right? Oh, we're going to close on this day. Well, is my lender ready? Is my title company ready? Does my realtor fill out the paperwork? And you feel a lot of times captive.
Yeah.
And now my word with Susie the seller is dependent on all these other human beings out there and their sicknesses and ailments and schedules. So I think that's not just a commercial, because people need to understand it. It all depends on what type of experience you want your customers to have. There's such a big push these days in the investor world. Oh, hire a VA for that and a VA for that and a VA for that. We've talked about this a lot. I mean, we could definitely save money, in theory, hiring VAs, but if you sacrifice the experience, does that cost you money in the long term, right?
That's right. And, as we've grown at RCN, one of the things we did, once again, it's all about price. Got to keep costs low to be able to give the best price in the marketplace. Service wins, but price is important. So, we went offshore with some of our back office operations. The only reason I did that was because I knew that the folks I was bringing on board offshore were full-time RCN folks. They weren't in a third party that worked for a huge processing house where they would circulate our documents among people who had bandwidth. So that sort of one-to-one relationship, Tim, to your point, no matter what business you're in, is everything, right? Like, if you can't hold your team accountable with the both successes and the failures, what good is it? To me, that's how capitalism works best.
Well, and our team in India is part of our team. Last year when we took the entire U.S.-based team to Fort Lauderdale, because we hit our goals, and that's how Jeff rolls. If you've never met Jeff at a conference, there's going to be a party when we win. There may not be when we lose, but there's still going to be parties, actually. There were a lot of problems getting visas, and it just wasn't going to be an easy lift at all to get the India team. But you made sure that you sent them to a weekend retreat at a resort in that country. And I just remember all the stories of how no one had ever done that for someone like that. Nobody had ever treated their offshore people the same as they treat their onshore people. And I think there's a lot of lessons in that too for our customers that use these VAs, right? Don't just save the money. Don't just gain the efficiency of having a 24-hour clock. Treat them with the same kindness, respect, and opportunities as you do your U.S.-based.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we celebrated here in the U.S., and it was amazing. Everybody had such a good time. But we did the same in India. Everybody got on a plane. They went to the beach. And to see the videos, it was still a COVID thing at that time.
Yeah.
We couldn't join them. But it was amazing. And to me, you always know what the right thing to do is, so just do it.
Right. Well, in our monthly newsletters, we make sure that we devote a certain section to that team. And it's been impressive. And we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, I do want to talk about core values, about selecting a team, advice for small businesses, and of course, the Money Minute. All right. Stick around. We'll be right back.
REI Inc. is a monthly business publication for real estate investors, covering all types of real estate investments and strategies. It is the most comprehensive real estate investment publication on the market. All of the articles are written by the top leaders in the industry, so investors are assured of always getting the best information possible. Each month, REI Inc. also profiles the top companies in the industry and provides insights and data into key regional markets. Along with their sister platforms, the REI Referral Network and Highest Invest, real estate investors have exclusive access to off-market investment opportunities and national acquisition and disposition initiatives. To learn more, visit www.rei-inc.com, where you can also access the REI Referral Network. Also, be sure and visit www.highest-and-vest.com to view the latest exclusive off-market assets with near immediate acceptance decisions and closing strategies. You can also email marketing@rei-referralnetwork.com to request more information.
Welcome back to Uncontested Investing. Tim Herriage, thank you for sticking around. Don't forget, drop down below, comment, like, subscribe, give us feedback, let us know you're still there. Jeff, Money Minute. There's a young Jeff Tesch out there. There's an investor that's killing it and wants to take his business to the next level, or maybe is struggling and got some scars last year and is thinking, maybe I need to go back to corporate. You got 60 seconds, the best stuff you have, pour into them. You ready?
Ready.
Go.
I talked about patience before. Now I really want to talk about your team. Your team is everything. Investors, entrepreneurs, whoever is out there today listening to this podcast, no matter what line of work you're in, your teammates are your lifeline. And what does that mean? What it means is hire folks that are like-minded to you and never, ever ask folks to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. If you hold that golden rule, treat others as you would treat yourself, do the work the same way your teammates would do it, morning, noon, and night, you will be rewarded with more gifts than you can imagine. And those folks will go on to wonderful careers in your company as you scale and expand and see not only their personal aspirations fulfilled, but see their families grow. You will have the ability to understand just how important human kindness really is. Never forget it.
So sometimes it annoys me how nice you are. And that's like in a very complimentary way, because you know me, I'm the rough and tough Marine, right? And sometimes I'm like, no, Jeff, fire him. And you're like, calm down, son, like get back in your lane, right? Like, but it is very important to have accountability, but there's never anybody in this company, RCN, that would look at what you've asked them to do that they would never think, well, Jeff would never do this, right? Like, I mean, because you were the guy slinging loans 12 years ago, right?
That's right.
You've been the guy closing loans. I get more emails from you after 6 o'clock at night than anybody else. And you may be the only one that, other than me, that sends a lot of emails on the weekends. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's lead from the front, right?
It is. And, you know, the employees, no matter what segment of the company they work in, it really, it takes a village. It really takes a village to close a loan.
Yeah.
From that frontline person taking the cold call on the way in, all the way to the servicer after the loan is closed. And when we talk about employees and you need to have that empathy of what each person does in that cog and their importance of the role. And it's easy for employees in different segments of the company to get siloed and think, well, so-and-so can't get to it, and now I'm suffering. And what I try to impact on everyone is put yourselves in their shoes, right? Like, treat each other with kindness, and it will come back to you tenfold. It really, really will.
Well, one of the things that we're doing at RCN that I've actually been telling a lot of people at the masterminds we go to this last year or so that they need to focus on is there's this career path, right? And now there's the leadership development training where one of the first parts is you have to go work in the other parts of the company, right? Because if you only know your part, how can you really grow into a leader like you were just talking about? And so that's the practical implementation of literally what you were just saying people should do.
It's so important.
You want to talk about a little bit about core values? I know you're in the process of there's a hidden vault of the new revamp at RCN, but can you talk about why core values are important and how the individual entrepreneurs should use them to guide them?
Yeah, and this is really a generic statement for anyone in business, which is your core values need to be identified. We're getting in the process of rolling out ours, but more important, whatever your core values are, and there's a lot of similarities across, different businesses, making sure the employees are important. All those things are important, but action items to support the core values are really how you're going to get broad adoption. And one of the things that we're rolling out here next month is we're going to roll out the core values with specific action items to support those core values. I can't tell you what they are today because they're coming out next month, but the senior management team is so excited to be able to have these different ways that employees can support what we value most. And that's how you really get broad adoption.
That's right. And on that broad adoption, when you're running a small business or even multiple branches like you had in the old sandwich days, how do you deal with streamlining expectations in multiple locations when you may have a different office culture, or you may have a different market? One of our investors buys one house a year and makes like $1 million per house, right? Some of them may buy 100 houses to make $1 million, right? So,
right.
I mean, how do you streamline that and maybe the expectations and accountability, given that many entrepreneurs have different, I guess, verticals, or everything's different?
Sure. Yeah, and it really starts from the beginning with setting up your processes and procedures, making sure that whatever your funnel is, whatever your flow is, that everybody understands how it all works. Documentation, which is something, I mean, literally, when it was just the two, there was no documentation. It was me picking up the phone trying to sell money. But as we scaled, boy, folks, you got to document. You must document. It was never a strong suit for me. That's why I hired folks who are really good at process. I just want to close loans. I don't want to talk about process, but I know as the leader of the company, without it, we've got nothing. We can't scale. So, to answer your question, Tim, process, and that will lead you to a much more transparent expectation for your team.
As we continue through 23 and 24, and there's presidential elections coming up and primaries, and I think everybody wants to overcomplicate this business, and it's almost like using the news cycle as an excuse for why you can or can't do something. Could you talk a little bit about maybe some things that you know to be true in the investment industry that our, I'd say, more successful borrowers and brokers are doing, and I don't know, maybe some common threads you see amongst those that are the news cycle doesn't bother. They just keep on doing what they're doing.
Yeah, the most successful investors we have, whether it be on the buy, fix, and sell side or the building a rental portfolio, is they know their markets better than anybody. So when a deal comes up, whether it be on the MLS, off the MLS, maybe it's an REO, maybe it's not an REO, they know what that price point is and the time to strike. There's no ambiguity. They know their market inside and out. And it's one of the things that RCN has been so successful with being a national lender is, I'll use the word partnering with our best customers because they know their marketplace. Folks, you need to know your numbers. You need to understand on this block, on this street, this is what that house is worth today.
Right.
And then that gives you the ability to be able to strike and strike fast. You know, when you have a relationship with any private lender, that transparency, that trust is there, and you're able to strike fast.
You know, basic math is something that has almost disappeared from many businesses.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that's been because of the rising tide, and it was rising so fast, math didn't matter, but math matters these days.
Oh, it sure does. I mean, listen, here where we sit in Dallas-Fort Worth, I mean, the market moved so fast for so long.
Yeah.
It was almost like you couldn't buy wrong.
No.
You just couldn't. Well, you can buy wrong today.
Yeah.
At 100%. And there's other marketplaces around the country that are struggling right now because they got a little ahead of their skis. But if you know your numbers, there's still money to be made in those markets. You just got to know your numbers.
So we're going to run out of time here soon. Do you have any parting thoughts or parting shots?
Well, listen, as a private lender that has struggled to adopt the interest rate movement so quickly, right? I mean, it was fast, Tim. We were moving rates every single day. I would tell the investors out there, good times are coming. We are going to see lower rates. We're going to see lower rates before this year is out. So get ready. Have your plan. Stick with it. Be patient, and you will be rewarded.
There you go. So if you're out there listening, you want to connect with Jeff, LinkedIn, he is super active. Multiple times a day, you'll see him liking, commenting, and even reposting or resharing or sharing original content. Easy to find. You're Jeffrey Tesch there, right?
Yep.
All right. Is it just at Jeffrey Tesch? Do you know?
Yep.
Okay.
At Jeffrey Tesch. And folks, go into my LinkedIn, find some of my old videos. They're not all just business related. We got some cool stuff at the office I like to share and show. You'll get a real kick out of it.
And Jeff is a hoot in general.
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being here. It's about time. It's 52 episodes, but we got you.
Here it is, and I got to tell you, Tim, the studio is amazing.
I'm very happy with what we've done, and I'm very excited about what we'll do in episode 53 and beyond.
Appreciate it.
All right, Jeff, thanks for being here. We are out of time. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for stopping back by. Remember, your network is your net worth, and today you've been growing both. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Uncontested Investing Show. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time. The preceding program is furnished by RCN Capital, LLC. The information provided is for general education purposes only and does not constitute any legal, financial, investment, or other professional advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by any speaker are the speaker's own opinion and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of RCN Capital, LLC. No information contained in this episode should be construed as financial, investment, or legal advice from RCN or any individual, author, host, or guest. You should always consult a financial advisor before investing.